Welcome to Jesse Waters Prime Time tonight.
The truth is they're trying to get out of it because she doesn't want to debate. She's not a good debater, not a smart person. She doesn't want to debate.
Is Kamala Harris ducking out of the debate?
And it doesn't matter how we look at this moment. It's about winning.
Take a look at what happened.
Whistleblowers, suspensions, investigations, and the Trump assassin.
We're making sure we have people everywhere votes are being cast and counted to have eyes on everything.
Democrats already playing games with Republican poll watchers. A special report. Plus,
what have you heard about Tim Walz?
A goofy kind of guy, man, the way he... And then high five, high five.
Party's over in Chicago, and Democrats woke up this morning with a Harris hangover. Still one eye shut, they rolled over in bed, opened up the paper to this headline. Joy is not a strategy. The New York Times saying they cringed when Kamala was called the president of joy. Quote, Democrats are bent on making the word happen. But joy is not a political strategy, and God is not a political strategy. Being our joyful mamala is not going to win the election. And the Ragin' Cajun had to dump a bucket of ice cold water on their heads.
It has to be good in November. And I tell Democrats some caution here. First of all, most quants say we have to win by 3 in the popular vote to win the Electoral College. So when you see a poll that says we 2 up, well, that's actually you're 1 down if the poll is correct.
Yeah, you'd lose.
The other thing is Trump traditionally, when he's on the ballot, chronically underpolls. Democrats have said, oh, James and Debbie down. Oh, what's he talking about? Well, I'm not just telling you, you got to win by 3.
The honeymoon's over. No more fake Beyonce teases to juice enthusiasm. Trump's already ramping up his schedule and putting his foot on the gas. One Trump advisor says, get ready for Trump on steroids. Friday's RFK endorsement and today's observance of Biden's disgraceful Afghan withdrawal, where 45 laid wreaths with the family members of the fallen in Arlington, has stolen Harris's convention momentum. Meanwhile, we haven't seen Kamala since Thursday night. After spending last week inside a hotel room rehearsing every line of her speech, she's now pulling a Biden and going AWOL for debate prep. 4 days straight of debate prep. The last time a Democrat over-prepared for a debate, they got knocked out with 1 punch. And debate prep might not be going very well because suddenly her handlers want to change the rules. They want Harris to be able to sit down at a table and want her to be able to bring notes. Now, if I was Kamala, I'd want to forget the last 4 years, too. But she can't bring cheat sheets to a debate. Even Hillary didn't need to be sitting. Kamala also wants to unmute the mics. 2 weeks ago, Harris said the debate was over, and it was time for Trump to man up. Now she's throwing last-second curveballs, ripping up the rules. Is she trying to weasel her way out of this?
We agreed to the same rules. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. I'd rather have it probably on, but the agreement was that it would be the same as it was last time. In that case, it was muted. I didn't like it the last time, but it worked out fine. I mean, ask Biden how it worked out. It was fine. And I think it should be the same. We agreed to the same rules. Same rules and same specifications. And I think that's probably what it should be. But they're trying to change it. The truth is they're trying to get out of it because she doesn't want to debate. She's not a good debater. She's not a smart person. She doesn't want to debate.
Kamala wants the mics hot because she wants to be interrupted. Men don't look good when they interrupt women or argue with women. That's why I try not to interrupt Jessica so much on the 5. I try. And she'll probably snap back something sassy and the media will package it that she won. The stakes are high because a debate would be the first time Democrats lose control over their anointed one. She's on her own for 90 minutes, live, in front of the whole country. No script, no notes, no Oprah, no Obama, no excuses. Kamala is going to have to defend the Biden record while explaining how she's different. defend her own record and explain how that's changed and what it's changed into. Defend her role in the cover-up in the coup. And at the same time, attack Trump's record on the economy, immigration, and crime, which everybody knows is better. And she'll have to do it with joy in her first presidential debate against a guy who's done 6. Now you know why she needs to bring notes. You'd think you'd want to do some interviews first, test out some lines, see how you react when you're being challenged before you debate Trump cold. But apparently, even that's too risky. The only way Kamala can win is if you don't know anything about her.
There's no reason for her to go on your show before the election, but I can actually see her.
Yes, there is, because I speak to the exact voter she needs, the person who is in the middle. Basically, that's exactly the audience she needs. The MSNBC crowd is already voting for her.
I think they're just all about winning the election, all right? Sometimes it's just about winning, and it doesn't matter how we look at this moment. It's about winning.
Right.
This is about winning.
Yep. No, it is.
It's a mad dash, and she is running, and she's not stopping to stumble.
Tarantino just said exactly what the Democratic Party believes, but's usually afraid to say. They'll do whatever it takes to win. Coups, duck debates, hide their policies, no interviews, arrest their rival, gag him, raid his house, lie about him. It's about effing winning. He said it. It's not about you at all. And it's definitely not about the democratic process. If the Democrats' ultimate goal is power, it's really their only purpose in life, then they can create an entirely new election process. Each year can be different. One year it can be hide the candidate and mass mail ballots. The next time it can be whack the nominee and hand over his war chest to a woman who won't do interviews. And they'll just lie to you about what they're doing and call it fair.
How are you feeling about the switch?
I mean, the switch. No, we went through a very open process, a very inclusive process. It was bottom up. I don't know if you know that. Yes, that's what I've been told to say.
Yes, it was a blitz primary, I believe is what they called it.
It's a very, very fast blitz.
That's what I've been told to say. They're lying to you and laughing about it. Kamala's never won a single primary vote, ever. And the one debate she committed to, she's trying to wiggle out of. Kamala did her first sit-down interview with her running mate without a reporter.
I have white guy tacos and
what is that, like mayonnaise and tuna? What are you doing?
Pretty much ground beef and cheese.
That's okay. Do you put any flavor in it?
No.
Oh.
Here's the deal. No, they said to be careful and let her know this, that black pepper is the top of the spice level in Minnesota,
I'm the first vice president, I believe, who has ever grown chili peppers.
A country where the Democrat presidential nominee refuses to do interviews isn't a free country. You don't have a free press if the press isn't free to interview presidential nominees. Putin does more interviews than Kamala.
You running for the presidency of the United States of America. What you hiding for? And I mean hiding in plain sight. Somebody got to say it. Somebody got to say it. Now, you can't be running for the presidency of the United States. Not one single press conference, not one single one-on-one sit-down interview where somebody gets to question you about the questions that we ask. That's not fair. That's not fair.
They don't care if it's not fair. If there's a risk Kamala could expose herself to negative publicity by answering questions, and this could cost her votes, Kamala's handlers don't think it's worth it. If winning is everything, why take any risks at all? Why not just campaign from a safe space? They'll continue to do that until the risks of not talking outweigh the risks of talking. Meaning, if the press starts giving her a really hard time and she starts looking like a chicken, then she'll talk. And the press is calling her smart for not talking to them. They're saying she's brave for not doing interviews. The press, to this point, is enjoying being benched in an election year because they'd rather lose their jobs and self-respect than lose an election. Only a few reporters are looking around and saying, guys, we don't have jobs if we just let Kamala ignore us for the sake of winning.
What do you think about the fact that Kamala doesn't talk to the press? In a way, I feel like it's more insulting than what Trump does. And Trump says you're the enemy of the people, which is pretty bad. But she's kind of saying I don't need you. I'm not talking to you. You don't matter. You're not relevant anymore. To me, that's even worse.
There's nothing the press hates more than feeling irrelevant. If the media doesn't have access to Kamala, then the media is just what? A bunch of campaign interns arguing with Republicans.
She said when she ran for president that she wants to eliminate private health insurance on the job. 170 million Americans, John.
Yeah, I mean that is not her position now. She
How do you know that's not her position? How do you know that's not her position?
I mean, she says she no longer supports Medicare for all.
She has not said that. Okay. Maybe anonymous aides on a Friday night have said that. When she campaigned for president, in her own right, she did in fact promise things like decriminalizing illegal immigration and taking away health insurance.
But that's his position she's clearly changed on, and she said she has changed. Yes, she has.
No, she has not. John, she has not said that.
It's millions upon millions of illegal immigrants that have come in just since Kamala Harris became the border czar a few years ago.
She was put in charge of the root causes of migration.
Well, the root causes of migration, I would say, Kristen, is that Kamala Harris refuses to do her job as border czar.
Don't these people have any dignity? The Democrat nominee for president won't even talk to you, thinks you're useless, and you still go out and shill for her. What does it say about a candidate who steals a nomination, lies about her record, and then won't show her face? Elections drill down to one thing: character. Trump has an opportunity to turn this election into, are you going to vote for someone who's real or a phony? Rich Lowry, National Review, writes this in the Times. Presidential races in this sense are deeply personal. They usually involve disqualifying the opposing candidate rather than convincing voters that his or her platform is wrong-headed. Everything has to be connected to the deeper case that Ms. Harris is weak, a phony, and doesn't truly care about the country or the middle class. The scattershot Trump attacks on Harris need to be refocused on these character attributes. Politics not that hard. Trump has to do the thing Democrats have been trying not to do: tell us who the real Kamala Harris is. A weak fraud, fixated on being exposed instead of fixated on you, the voter. Did you know that Kamala Harris didn't grow up in Oakland, as she always said she did?
Where did this strength and passion come from in this daughter of middle-class Oakland?
Kamala Harris grew up in Berkeley, the People's Republic of Berkeley. Berkeley, the most insanely liberal precinct in America. Her birth certificate lists an apartment right next to Berkeley's campus. It's a half block south of People's Park, which is basically ground zero for every single radical protest movement. Kamala attended Berkeley public schools and was even bused to Berkeley public schools. Remember? That little girl was me. If you lie about where you grew up, which is at the core of who you are, people can't trust you. Maybe one day she'll be asked about it. Or maybe not. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.